Hello and welcome to this brief training of how to use the TLD970 in-motion dimensioning system. If you're watching this video, it is likely that your operation has recently invested in a TLD970. Today, I'm going to take you through some best practices, a quick overview of the system so that you are enabled to best work with the system to successfully achieve measurements. I'm going to jump in first to a overview of the system itself, what it's being used for so that you understand the background, and then we'll get into how to work with the system. Okay, all right. So first things first, why did your operation invest in a TLD 970? Many operations use a in-motion dimensioning solution in order to capture the dimensions of their freight for revenue recovery. So this is making sure that your customers have marked accurately in their paperwork the actual dimensions of their freight. And if not, we make sure that that is adjusted. Other use cases are, helpful load planning and then general data collection. So there's a wide variety of reasons why your operation may have invested in the solution. But from your point of view, it's important to kind of have an overview of the system so that you can better work with it and get a high read rate during your daily operation. So first things first, let me point out the system here. Now the mechanical installation may look slightly different at your operation. There are a few different mechanical installs, but in general, the hardware is the same. So we have 4 dimensioning heads, 3 of them are above, and those are used to measure length, width of the pallet as it is driving through, as well as the speed. And then there's another dimensioning head on the floor. And the dimensioning head on the floor is used to pick up where the pallet is as far as the height. So looking for the height of the pallet as well as any tilt. All of those aspects are then combined and with the algorithms in the system are then used to calculate the dimensions of the freight. So, hey, that's kind of the basics of what you see in your facility. There's also a couple cameras on the ends that are used to capture a picture of the freight and some visual management as well that is important for you as an operator to watch for. Things like the red, yellow, and green lighting that indicates when the system is ready to be driven through, as well as the screens here, which indicate that the system is ready. So let's get into now kind of first preparation as you start to consider working with the system, starting with preparing your pallet. So give us a second and we'll pull a pallet up. Okay, so we now have our forklift driver and want to talk through some things to consider as far as the pallet itself that are just helpful background information for you to know in case you ever do get an error with the system, you know where it may be coming from. So first things first, the system can dimension one pallet at a time. This is one complete pallet. If there was a pallet stacked on top of this, you could not pick up both and drive through the system and achieve a legal for trade measurement. So that is important to know. One pallet at a time. If you have pallets that are stacked and you're used to transporting stacked pallets around your facility, okay, but we really need process change wise to make sure that if it is a pallet that needs a dimension, we only drive through with one at a time. Second of all, something that may cause an error, and I know this is, hey, you're working in a fast-paced operation, there's a lot to consider, but if you do happen to see, for example, some major plastic hanging down, or maybe a part of the wood pallet that has broken off and is hanging, hey, that could cause an error when you drive through the system. So if you think of it, just remove that extra plastic, tuck it in, cut it off, whatever. So that way we avoid any errors within the system. Another thing, when you come to pick up the pallet, it is very important that we pick the pallet up off the ground enough. I've always been told that enough that there's light shining through. That means roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters off the ground. So as the driver, you can't, I know I've seen it in facilities where a driver barely picks it up and the pallet is practically scraping on the floor. We need the system to be able to see the underneath of the pallet just enough, right? So Terry, if we go ahead and pick that up, Another thing here, depending on the mast of your forklift, maybe you have the ability to tilt the forks. In general, we can work with a bit of tilt, but best practice would be level, right? So we don't want an extreme tilt up or extreme tilt down. Generally level, plus minus a couple degrees is okay, is going to help you to achieve the best results. Okay, so hey, that I think is the general overview of best practice when approaching and picking up your single pallet. And we're now going to look at a few of the different ways in which we will drive through the system, some elements to keep in mind to achieve a high read rate. Okay, so we're now going to watch our forklift driver take a couple passes through the system. And there are a few things right at the top that I want to mention. So first of all, there can only be one forklift driving through the system at a time. So if you imagine two forklifts, one approaching from north and one approaching from south, one needs to leave way for the other to pass through the system, roughly 3 seconds, and then the other can pass through. So what we cannot have is two passing through at the exact same moment. So we do need to have one forklift at a time. That's one thing to mention. Second of all, minimum and maximum speeds. In miles per hour, minimum 2 miles per hour, maximum 10 miles per hour. In kilometers, 3 kilometers to 15. So somewhere in that range is the acceptable speed that will help you to achieve the best results and legal for trade results. As a reminder, your operation is likely using this system to charge customers money. That means we have to operate within a legal context and in a good legal way to achieve these measurements, right? So we have to operate in the way that the system was approved to be used. So those are important things to keep in mind. Now, there are other aspects and ways in which you can drive through the system that will help you to achieve success. So I want to take a look at those. And right now we're going to switch to the other camera angle, and then we'll watch our driver as he processes a full transaction. So you can now see our driver. He's ready to pick up this pallet. He has taken a step off in this case, and he's got his handheld barcode reader. He's going to grab that handling unit. So Terry, go ahead and grab that handling unit of the pallet. Now that pallet is linked to that forklift. So those two pieces of data are now married together. He's now going to be prompted inside the truck to go ahead and pick up that pallet that's on the screen inside his truck. And then he's going to be told to proceed under the dimensioner. Another important aspect of the system is that it is bi-directional. So you can approach from either direction, facing either direction, and you can go through forward and backward. So the system is very flexible. All right, so I now want to demonstrate some of the possible errors that can happen when we drive through the system in the wrong way. So Terry, we're going to have you pick up the pallet and then drive through the system and try to give us an error. Whatever you feel like, we can do driving angle, pallet tilt. So here he comes. There we go. And what did we get? Split point. So he was driving through at too much of an angle. Something that I always say during my demonstrations to customers when we do these demos is no Tokyo drift. If everyone has probably seen the movie or knows what it is, no drifting around the corner, right? We know that logistics facilities, you're moving fast, you're trying to get to your next destination, but we need to drive through the system generally straight. Plus minus 5 degrees is okay, but generally not too much of an angle. Let's see what other errors we can get. Maybe pallet tilt or stopping under the system. Terry, if you want to come back through. So he has adjusted the forks on his forklift. They're really tilted. So let's see if we get an error here. Yes, pallet tilt. So you can see there, it did take the measurement, but it would be flagged in the system. So that would not be able to be used as a legal for trade transaction because of that error. Now, you would get notified of that in your truck, on the PC in your truck, it would tell you. And you can see the visual management as well on the screen here. So again, if you do go through the system and you get an error like that, just loop back around and try to go through again, right? So ideally, hey, I would guess that your operation wants to be close to 100% read rate. That means sometimes we have to go through again if we do get an error. But the more that you work with the system, I'm sure that you will see, hey, you get a consistently good read rate as long as you're keeping within kind of the bounds of the best practices. So I think we covered some of the main ways in which we can get errors. So again, it's turning through the system. It's too much of a pallet tilt on your forks. Another one would be stopping under the system or slowing down, right? So we're going through the system and then we slow down and then go back to full speed. Again, keeping a consistent speed throughout and ideally even accelerating through the system is going to be the best way to achieve a good measurement. All right, now that we've covered some of the errors, I'm going to take us through one last section and then we will close out the training. All right, last couple little reminders here. And hey, these are things that, again, maybe you're not thinking about day to day, but if you notice something and if you're getting some errors, these are things you can check. Things like tire pressure. Generally, you're not looking at the tire pressure of your forklift day to day, but if your forklift happens to have a nearly flat tire, that can cause issues for the system when it is trying to tear out the forklift. So that is something to look at. The temperature in the building, the system does have a temperature limit of maximum 40 degrees Celsius. I think it's roughly 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And then on the low end, I think it's minus 20, and that's roughly 6 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, hey, if you are operating potentially in an extreme environment and you start to see issues with the system, these are things that could be causing that. Of course, your operation is always welcome to call and, request service if you're getting errors. But in general, the purpose of the training that we've walked you through today is to control the elements that you can control, which is how you drive through the system, the best way to pick up the pallet, the best way to drive through the system. And if you are consistently, kind of operating underneath those best practices, we know that you will achieve a really high hit rate with the system. And yeah, that ultimately makes your day easier and your management happy as well when they're able to get the most out of their investment. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next training video. Thanks.